So again, I'm Jeremy Schneider. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more in a moment, but tonight's workshop, we're focusing on the whole you, learning to navigate your inner parts and voices. If you have any sort of experience with trauma or your healing journey, you are in the right place. This is the right workshop for you. If you have any questions, submit them via the Q&A feature, which is on the bottom of the bar for Zoom. If you don't see it, it's in the more. You can click on more. Um, I think the workshop itself, without questions, should be in that 50-minute range. But I will gladly stay on as long as you want to address any questions you might have. Again, the chat is available. Please be nice and kind and respectful to each other. I have seen in other groups people just being really supportive to each other, and I can review the chats after the workshop is over, and I honestly I just find that so beautiful. So please feel free to do that. Feel free to use reaction emojis while I'm talking because we can't. As the weird way that Zoom sets up webinars is I can't see you. You can see me, but I can't hear you. Um, feel free to react with emojis or make comments in the chat, and I will see them later tonight or tomorrow. Tomorrow, I will send around an email that includes a link to the recording and to the slide deck and to a bunch of other resources and anything else that may come up from the evening. So look forward to that tomorrow. If you don't get that by tomorrow afternoon, reach out to me. You can do that through Meetup or through my website or whatever you'd like to do. And um, and so you don't have to worry about taking notes tonight if you don't want. I'll send this over tomorrow. Just one quick note, I will share my website with you, but just before I went on, it looked like my website was behaving very slowly. So pardon the problems if you run into any issues. Hopefully you won't, but okay. So tonight we're going to be talking about internal family systems. I'm not going to teach you everything you need to know about internal family systems, and I'm certainly not going to teach you uh, enough about internal family systems that you'll be able to, pass some sort of credential test, right? That's not the goal here. But what I will be focusing on are the key areas that I think, particularly if you're someone that is dealing with trauma or adversity or dealing with this, or you're on this healing journey, and I think this will be really, really helpful for you. And so I'm going to highlight those things and we'll talk about that and I'll kind of show you how you can even start using them today. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Jeremy Schneider. I run Build on Your Strengths. I'm a social worker. I'm a family therapist. I'm a certified life coach. I've written a book called Fatherhood in 40-Minute Snapshots, which is about my experiences parenting my kids, twins, who are now graduated college. I am publishing my memoir in the beginning of 2026, which is called In My Rearview Mirror. As you can tell, I do workshops. I do it on all sorts of topics revolving around mental health. So, particularly overcoming trauma, things like self-care. I do sleep. I've done workshops on self-compassion. And I also really like helping people think about using AI for your mental health. So much so that I have a Psychology Today column on that very topic. And I'll send you a link to that tomorrow. If you're interested, you're more than welcome to take a look at that. I've also developed what I call the integration path framework for overcoming trauma. And a lot of the stuff that I talk about in my workshops and in my writing really stems from this framework that I have. I also do a lot of writing. I'm probably publishing articles once every week or two. And so one of the things that I also do is I create guides. So I have 3 free guides right now. One is on self-awareness, recognizing your scripts. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Another is on self-care, understanding why self-care is important and what you can do to take care of yourself. And then the third is if you're interested in starting um, a mindfulness meditation practice. I have a really simple guide that will help you get started and also help you find uh, teachers, like experts out there who have written books and done workshops and stuff that you might really enjoy. So if you want to take a look at that, that's on my website. Again, I just warn you that my website might be a little slow tonight for reasons that I'm not really sure about. But hopefully by the time you take a look, it will have uh, gotten back to normal speeds. What is internal family systems? So before I answer that, it's important to understand what family systems theory is. Family systems theory is the originator, right? This was the original idea that people in a family were really like a system. And so, family systems theory helps us understand the organization, structure, and complexity of familial relationships and their influence on individual well being. Before family therapy, before family systems theory, the idea was really that like everything that involved the person's issues and challenges was that it was about them. And so families weren't really considered a huge factor, which is kind of crazy, of course, but family systems theory really helped develop that concept. And the idea that a family being a system means that it works and functions like a system, and that allows us to have a better way of restructuring and making changes within a system. Richard Schwartz, who developed internal family systems, he came up with a very similar idea, but that within the person, a person is a system that has different parts, all operating under the leadership of our core self with a capital S. When I use the term self tonight, for the most part, I'm going to be using it with a capital S. Sometimes I will say capital S, sometimes I won't. For the most part, I just mean with a capital S. And by that, I mean this core sense of self, this kind of adult you. And I will explain all of this, I promise. The idea in internal family systems is that we have many parts inside of us. Some of these parts are protective, and all of them were developed with the idea to help us, right? Some of these parts are protective. They're trying to shield us from pain, from discomfort, from difficulty. And others carry burdens, right? They're carrying weights, things of like shame, fear, anger, hurt. And the goal of IFS, very simply, is to listen and care for these parts. But fundamentally, it is to treat our parts, to treat the pieces of ourselves the way we never got treated growing up. It is a chance to conduct this healing process without waiting for someone else. It is us being what we always needed and never had. And that's one of the things I think that is so beautiful about it. We can be who we always needed. We're going to talk a lot about that tonight. The self, the self is your inner leader. The self is essentially one way to think about it is like your adult self, like who you are at your current age is yourself with the capital S, right? The core truth in IFS is that you were born good and you were born enough, right? You're not flawed. Self is not damaged. It is not injured. Self is good, right? Trauma, whatever you've been through, doesn't damage your essential self. It may constrain it, it may restrict it, it may make it hard to connect to it, but it doesn't actually damage it. The self is everything that's good about you, everything that feels true and authentic and genuine and connected, that is self. And self, yourself, has the ability to heal and lead your internal system. Excuse me. So, one of the things that I know about myself, I love sunsets. And one of the reasons that I love sunsets, I realized, is that when I am on the beach looking at the ocean, seeing the sun, I feel most fully aligned as myself with all of my parts. And so that's when I feel the best. It's one of those situations where I feel genuinely good and I feel whole in a way that I don't in other areas of my life. I know that when I feel that way, that is my core self. I am fully connected to me as myself. When I don't feel that way, I know that another part has taken over. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But what I want you to be able to do is try and find the moments in your life where you feel genuinely like yourself. Because the better that you can understand what you yourself feels like, the better you'll be able to notice and be aware of when other parts have taken over. So let's give you some more examples of what self can do for you. Richard Schwartz talks about the 8 C's of leadership. You don't have to memorize all of this, but the reason I bring this up is because I want you to be able to have a understanding of what are the qualities of self so that you know when you are feeling these, experiencing these qualities, you know that is self. And when you're feeling the opposite of these qualities, that is a part. So I'm going to go through them quickly. Calmness, curiosity, compassion, confidence, courage, clarity, creativity, and connectedness. Again, these are qualities that help you realize you are connected to yourself. These are the qualities yourself already has. You don't have to learn them. You already have them. And then he also talks about the 5 P's of self, and that's presence, patience, perspective, persistence, and playfulness. And again, it's these qualities that your self already possesses. And when you feel yourself acting in this way, you feel these feelings, you feel this that have this attitude, these qualities, then you know that you're acting from your core self, the genuine you, right? And when you're not, you're acting from a part. So let's address what it may be one of your worries about this whole process. The difference between IFS, again, it's internal family systems, and dissociative identity disorder, which was formerly called multiple personality disorder. They're very different. They're almost nothing alike. If you probably haven't been diagnosed with DID by now, then you don't have it. So don't worry about it. But just so you understand, IFS views inner parts as normal, universal, and adaptive aspects of the mind. And the adaptive part is really key, and we'll get to that in a moment. Parts may become extreme due to things that we experienced, but it doesn't mean that that's part of a psychiatric disorder. And having parts is natural. It's the way that our mind functions. The us being aware of it, recognizing it, and addressing it is just helping us be better aware of what's going on inside of us. Right? DID, dissociative identity disorder, again, formerly multiple personality disorder. Right? This is a scientifically diagnosed illness that is assessed by psychiatrists. And it's done using what's called the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which is created by the American Psychiatric Association. Don't worry about this. I wanted to have a slide to be able to remind you to not worry about this. So let's talk a little bit about parts. You have a sense of self, right? Your self is good. You have this core self. You have these qualities that are ways that help you remember that you are yourself. Let's dive into the whole idea of these different parts that are already inside you. There are 3 categories of parts. Okay. One are exiles. The other is managers. The other is firefighters. Exiles are the ones you probably notice the most. That's the ones that carry pain. They're the ones that feel shame. They're the ones that feel those darker, heavier feelings from your past experiences. We often hide them due to this fear of vulnerability that we have. But because that's what carries these heavy emotions, we tend to notice them the most. We also have these parts called managers or protectors. And these are the ones that strive to control your environment and emotions. And what that means is that it acts in a way to protect you from whatever it is afraid that is going to happen, or what is afraid that already has happened to you. Meaning, let's just say you had a parent that berated you consistently all the time. The manager was developed as this part to protect you from that. And so it it pushes you to perfectionism in order to try and get you to not make a mistake, in order to not have this parent berate you. The challenge with parts, and I'm going to cover this a little bit more, parts were created as a way of dealing with trauma. And the real challenge there is that they were created to help protect us from whatever was happening when we were growing up. It's just we're not growing up anymore. And so it's still living in that moment, and we're not. And so the things that used to protect us, or at least that it tried to protect us, often feel like obstacles and things that are standing in our way. But it all comes from essentially a good place. The other category of parts are firefighters. These are the ones that have kind of the addictive, unproductive, maybe kind of self-destructive behaviors. This is the substance use, the overeating. This is when you find yourself acting kind of impulsively when you're experiencing some sort of heavy emotion because you don't want to deal with it. You distract yourself and do something else. So you can have lots of different parts inside you, but they will fall into these three categories. So I've touched on trauma a couple of times. Trauma is defined by the American Psychological Association as an emotional response to a deeply distressing or disturbing event. But what I want to emphasize here is that it's not just the event itself, it is how we experience it and how we process it. Two people can have the same exact experience, but only one of them may experience it as traumatic. And that's not a flaw with the person, but genetic, chemical, the previous history, experiences that we've had, all of that comes into play in terms of what the kind of impact that has on us. And it's important to understand that trauma exists on a continuum, but that all trauma affects our childhood development process. So I think of trauma as kind of like the trauma spectrum is these three T's, right? There's the big T trauma that we all know about. This is the stereotypical huge stuff that you've had to deal with: abuse, violence, loss of parents, things like that, right? This is the stuff that really just is so disruptive to your developmental path and is often long lasting. The small T trauma is so much more subtle. And that's where it's tricky. It's like if you picked one moment of small T trauma, right? Your parents forgot to pick you up from school once, and it's like, well, that's not that big of a deal. But if that's the kind of thing that they did on a regular basis, then that layers on top, causing real challenges and difficulties for you. And that's where things like emotional neglect, right? Like if you're neglected once, you're going to be fine. But if you're neglected repeatedly, that's really going to hurt. But it's just more subtle. It's a little bit harder to tell. And then the third T is adversity. And this is where like things that you experience in life, such as discrimination, poverty, chronic stress, whatever else may be going on that doesn't necessarily directly affect you, but affects you and your family, it's going to add another layer of burden and challenge for you. And it's important to understand that all these experiences happen and that it doesn't really matter whether something is big enough to count as some sort of T on the spectrum. All that matters is that if it hurt you, it hurt you, and you need to do some healing around that. And the IFS process, and certainly some of the other stuff that I talk about, these are ways of for you to be able to maneuver on that healing journey. So it's important to kind of understand how trauma creates parts. I had a therapist explain this to me years ago, and the idea was that we're kind of born whole, and through the various T's on the trauma spectrum, parts get broken off in order to protect us. And so that's the protective fragmentation that we're talking about. We'll have a part that breaks off in order to protect us. And that is its way of, like we talked about earlier, a parent that constantly berates you, right? It may learn this, well, if I can just be perfect, maybe I can avoid that, right? It's not true. Of course, it's not true because it has nothing to do with us, right? We're not being berated because of something we did. We're being berated because that's the way that person was. Probably that's the way that person was raised, right? But we don't know that as kids. We don't understand that. So we're doing everything we can to try and control the situation, even if we actually don't have any control. The second thing, and I will also talk about this a little bit more, but that these protective parts get stuck in time. So in our amygdala, right, which is that fight or flight, that's the more kind of primal part of our brains, right? When we experience trauma, time does not pass. So something happens in my current life that makes me feel like I did when I was a kid. I don't react like an adult that I am. I react like a kid because my amygdala goes, oh crap, fight or flight, got to prepare. We're back to being 9 years old. What do we do? Right? Part of that, the real challenge of dealing with our parts is the fact that they think, one, that they're back in the past, that they're still, like if we take this 9-year-old part that's inside me, one, it still thinks it's 9 years old. Two, it still thinks the trauma is happening. It doesn't know it's over. It doesn't know that I've grown up and moved on and created a life of safety for myself. So even though you feel like maybe you've made progress, these parts come up and it makes you feel like you haven't made progress, but it's not true. You have. It's just there's still more healing that needs to happen. And then again, the whole idea of that this past protection setup, right? Like these parts were created in order to protect us from particular experiences growing up. It's just that now they stand in our way. That's not their fault. They don't mean anything by it. They're just trying to help. They're trying to protect us. So one of the things that we need to do is to help them see that it's over, that what we went through is over, that we survived, we made it, and we're doing well now, and that they can stop. They can let go because we can handle it. Self can handle this now. One of the great ways that IFS gets you thinking about kind of the management of yourself and your parts is the bus metaphor. And I'm a huge fan of this one. So imagine you're driving a bus. You're in the front seat. You've got a whole slew of parts behind you. And that's kind of the way it should be. You should be driving the bus. They're along with you. They're literally along for the ride. And that's good. There's some small problem. There's a detour ahead. They know that I can handle this. Like I, as myself, I can handle this. I just keep driving the bus or I pull up Google and I find another route and we're good. But let's say I have an experience where I have to go talk to a boss, or I'm driving the bus and a cop pulls me over. Things start to go awry, right? Because my amygdala, right, is thinking, oh crap, I'm in trouble. I'm 9 years old again. And I don't know if you know, but being an adult is really difficult. As an adult, it's really difficult. Being an adult as 9 years old is impossible. All those moments when you feel like you can't handle it, where you feel so overwhelmed, you don't know what to do, that's a part. That's not self. That's a part. So, in the example of, let's say, a cop pulling me over, right? I start to feel overwhelmed. I say things like, I can't do this. I can't handle this. I'll even start to feel like I'm on the verge of tears because I'm not 54 years old anymore. It's not 2025. I'm nine again. And I'm dealing with all of the crap that I had to deal with growing up. But when I'm myself, I can handle those situations. And so the whole process of IFS is being able to allow yourself to be able to work with these parts and help them feel safer and calmer so that when they do pop up and try to take over driving the bus, you can calm them down and let them know it's going to be okay. That I got it. I can handle it. You did your job. You protected us for so long. I can do it now. It's a very different feeling and it's a very different way of engaging with yourself. So I touched on this a little bit, but let's really get into some of the signs that parts are driving the bus. Again, the whole idea that parts kind of take over running our life. When you have reactions that feel bigger than the current situation, right? Anytime you feel something that's disproportionate, it's probably a sign that a part has taken over. You're working on a really small thing and something goes wrong and you just like, ah, right? That's a part. That's not self. Self handles that with no problem. That's a part. When you're feeling like a child in adult situations, that's most definitely a part. When you feel your body responding in a very dramatic way, whether it's panic, whether it's just shutting down, whether it's like disconnecting, whether it's this constant state of alertness, right? All of that are parts trying to protect us. That harsh inner criticism, right? That's a part, right? It that the idea there is that hey, if I criticize us first, maybe I can prevent someone else from doing that. It's not necessarily the most logical thing in the world, but we were kids. What did we know? We were just doing the best we could in an incredibly difficult situation. I want to take a moment about shame. Shame is not just like being upset that you did something wrong. Shame is this fundamental belief that you are wrong, right? Self isn't wrong. Self makes mistakes, right? We make mistakes, but we can be understanding of that. We can try to change it. We can apologize. But shame is that we are fundamentally wrong as human beings, that our behaviors, our actions, our essence is wrong. And no one deserves that. That is a part, that is not self. When you do things that are kind of on autopilot, and I talk a lot about something called scripts, which are, the idea that you essentially grew up and you were handed a script on how to behave in certain situations. And so you respond without even thinking about it on autopilot. When you do that, that's a part, right? When you don't feel like yourself, you're on autopilot. Another one that I think people don't think about too much is sudden mood shifts. So when you're doing fine and then all of a sudden you're not doing fine and you're just like, what the heck happened? That's a part. A part took over for whatever reason. Maybe it's because, like, honestly, sometimes that happens to me at sunsets. I'm feeling so good at sunsets that a part of me will just take over and I'll start to feel kind of this darkness. And I realized that, like, growing up, I wasn't allowed to feel happy. That wasn't okay. And if I did feel happy, someone could crush that at any moment. So uh, it was better to just crush it myself instead of having someone else do it. It doesn't feel like a protective part, but it came from a protective place. And so then I can remind it, okay, well, you know what? I'm 54. It's 2025. I'm enjoying the sunset. I'd like to keep enjoying the sunset. I think we're all allowed to enjoy the sunset. And so that's part of the interactions that you can start to have with your parts that is really going to help you be able to manage your healing journey much better, I think. One really important thing to remember about self and parts, and I touched on it earlier, self is good. If you're feeling something, the uh, Buddhists talk about pleasant and unpleasant experiences, pleasant and unpleasant emotions, pleasant and unpleasant thoughts, right? Just marking them, noting them. Oh, that's a pleasant thought. That's an unpleasant thought, right? Not adding anything to it, just noting it. When we think about our experiences, our emotions, right? A pleasant thought, a pleasant emotion, that's self. An unpleasant thought, an unpleasant emotion, that's a part. And once we realize that, then we can ask that part, how can I help you? What do you need from me? And all of a sudden, I think game changer. So let's go in a little bit more about this, right? I touched on this earlier. Parts are frozen in time. It's hard to kind of comprehend this, but right, like this 9-year-old part inside of me, he's 9 years old. He has no concept that it's 2025. He has no concept that I'm 54 years old. He doesn't know it's over. He doesn't know that I live in a different state, that no one who hurt me back then is around now. He doesn't know. I remind him so that he does know. But at his core, he doesn't know. He's still in that time period. That is the one of the cruel tricks of trauma is that it takes away the sense of time, so you always think that you're there. And it is this outdated perception of thinking it's still happening, right? This 9-year-old me is still trying to protect me from the people that hurt me when I was growing up. He doesn't know. I mean, some of them are dead. He doesn't know that. To him, he's still 9. They're still alive. They're still strong, right? And they take over because when we were kids, they tried to protect us, right? This is that self fragmenting so that these parts could protect us and take care of us. And Part of our job as self, as these adults, is to be able to say, hey, great job. I can do this now. You can retire, take a break. You've earned it. You did everything we needed you to do. So one of the things I want to touch on is this relationship with ourselves is an opportunity for healing, for repair. I think the challenge is too many of us, one, we're not aware of the whole parts idea, right? But mostly we're not even used to being kind to ourselves. So what we end up doing is recreating the harm that we experienced. We're mean to our parts. We're we're we refer to them poorly. We get angry with them. We get frustrated. And that just perpetuates this cycle where instead of having this chance to heal, we're just repeating the harm over and over again. You've heard me talk to my parts a few times. And I'll do it some more. I really want you to get that feel of it. You want to acknowledge and reassure. You want to say, hey, I see you're scared and you're trying to protect me. Thank you. I'll take it from here. I'm 54. I can handle it now. We always want to be compassionate. We want to be kind. We want to be caring, right? What helped me the most is to think about my parts as how would I treat my kids if they were in this situation? And that's how I try and treat my parts. That, when you start thinking of it that way, it's a lot easier to be kind to your parts because I would never speak to my kids the way that I would sometimes speak to myself, right? And if you don't have kids, maybe it's a niece or nephew, maybe it's someone that you love, right? You wouldn't talk to them that way, the way that you sometimes talk to yourself. So compassion, kindness, caring, right? These are the ways that not only help us in the specific moment, but they help with this overall sense of healing that makes it easier for these parts to not feel like they have to take over. So there are three things that we're going to talk about in terms of healing. If you've seen any of my workshops or read any of my stuff, self-awareness is like one of the biggest things I talk about, right? In this case, and I've really been trying to help you kind of see this, but the self-awareness of being able to recognize when a part has taken over, when a part has been activated, right? So that you understand what yourself feels like. So when you don't feel like that, you can assume it's a part, or you can imagine, you can hear what a part is saying and think, oh, wait a second, that that's an unpleasant experience. That's an unpleasant thought. That's an unpleasant emotion. That probably means a part is crying out for help, right? That's where the power of self-awareness really comes in when we're thinking about parts. Curiosity over judgment, again, kindness, but also a curiosity. Like, what are you trying to tell me? What do you need from me? How can I help you? Right? There's this real chance to have a connection with this part instead of just kind of dismissing it where it doesn't have a chance to heal. And then I just did a workshop on this a couple weeks ago, self-compassion. The more that I do self-compassion, the more that I research self-compassion, the more I am convinced of just how crucial it is to the healing process. If you don't practice self-compassion, please start. If you need help with that or don't know where to start, reach out to me. There's my workshop a couple weeks ago. There's a woman by the name of Kristen Neff who basically developed all the research on the value of self-compassion. She has written books on the subject. She is She is the self-compassion guru. So, in treating yourself and treating your parts with compassion is healing, right? Again, it's giving us and our parts what we never had growing up. And that's the healing process. For most of my healing work in therapy, I thought I was looking for someone else to help me heal. And one of the things IFS does, and why I like it so much, is that IFS helps us to see that we can do the healing for ourselves. We're not waiting for someone else. We can do it. And I think that's beautiful. Again, the goal of IFS isn't to get rid of your parts. It's actually to help them to see that they're safe, they're secure, they don't need to do what they've been doing, that self can handle all of this so that they can basically retire and sip mocktails on the beach somewhere or whatever it is that they want to do. So grounding is another important component here for the reasons why I've touched on before, right? So resetting the timeline. I've spent years reminding myself how old I am, what year it is, the fact that I live in a different state, that some of the people that hurt me are not alive anymore, right? Resetting that timeline, grounding them to the present helps my parts understand they're not there anymore. It's not a perfect system. Of course, things happen, right? But it really makes a difference. It really does help. I also spend a lot of time in my life practicing things that help my nervous system feel safe. I take lots of breaks during the day. I slow down as much as I can. I think a lot about the kind of music that I listen to. I practice deep breathing. I exercise. All of these things that help my nervous system feel like, okay, I can turn off, right? I don't have to be in that fight or flight mode all the time, which is what we were taught growing up, right? You go through trauma, your fight or flight is essentially switched on permanently. And so we need to remember, oh wait, we can turn that off. So let's turn it off. And it'll turn back on and then you turn it off again, right? And then the other part is just reminding that the self is the leader here. The self is the one that leads the way, that can handle anything that comes up in our lives. When we don't feel like we can handle things, that's a part. When we remember we can handle things, that's self. I'm going to close with a one example of how parts dialogues work, but I want to walk you through the process first. So first, you want to identify that there is a part, right? And we've talked about how to do that. And so again, right, anything that feels unpleasant, it's probably a part. Anytime that you don't feel adult, it's a part, right? Ask yourself, what part of me is activated right now? And then we want to get curious. What are you afraid of? How old do you feel? What do you need from me? How can I help you? What can I do for you? And then offer reassurance. You're safe now. I, I got you. I'm going to take care of you. You took care of us for a long time. I'm an adult. I can handle this now. Like, I, I don't know if you can tell through the video, but that even now, and I've been doing this for a while, I can feel that emotional connection. It still matters when they hear that from me, my parts. And then you want to anchor them in the present reality, right? So I'll say, I'm 54. It's September 2025. I'm in the state of Florida. whatever else helps kind of ground you to the present. And it reminds them that it's different from where you were. So I'm going to give you an example from my life. So, as if I haven't already been doing that. Uh, Recently, I've been working at a place for 23 years. It's a very long time. And this place was really, really difficult for me to work at. There were some, really good things about it, but the environment there was very triggering for me. I had an opportunity to leave, and I really struggled with what to do. And as I worked through all this, I kind of realized, so this wasn't like 2 minutes, right? This was a series of conversations with myself, and I use AI for mental health support. So I used AI to have conversations. And this is essentially a summary. I just don't want you to think that it's like that simple. So the protector part inside me, right? That's the fierce, right? Incredibly loyal. Its main, like when I heard these words come out of my mouth, which was like, we must endure, we have to keep going, right? It's this like survival mentality that at all costs. That's when I realized like that's a part that's not self, right? Have to endure this exiled part where I always felt this powerlessness there, right? That I didn't have any say, that I didn't have any control, that I couldn't leave, but I didn't want to stay. And that was this part from being a kid. And that's what I felt growing up, right? I didn't have any sense of power. I didn't feel like I could get out of the traumas that I was experiencing. And so it has this belief of like it's not our choice. We don't get to decide what we want to do, right? Things happen to us. It's a very trauma experience, right? Things happen to us. But I've done a lot of work with myself, and I was able to realize like, yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but I'm ready for what's next. I'm ready to do it for me. And so I ended up having a series of conversations with my parts. One was essentially letting them know, like, thank you, right? Like, you helped me survive 23 years. That was great. I don't know what I would have done if we hadn't figured that out. And I understand why you don't want to feel powerless again. And the part's response was this sense of like leaving feels like a betrayal. Like I'm weak, right? If I was really strong, I would just keep going. And if I quit, then they win. And it was this moment of just like, and I was able to say, like, what if this isn't about winning or losing? What if this is about what we want and deserve? What if it's about having a sense of peace? What if we don't have to fight to keep going? We can choose a different path that feels better for us. And we were able to come to a place where, like, of course, I was still anxious about quitting, but I felt much more comfortable about it. And I quit. And you can probably tell I'm pretty glad about that. The whole purpose of this is to understand that all the different parts inside you are there for a reason. They were developed to protect you, and now essentially it's your self's job to take care of them in a way that no one ever took care of us. Okay, thank you. So let me run through some stuff and then we'll get to questions. So if you liked my workshop, please take a moment to rate and review it, depending on where you saw it from. I want to tell you a little bit about some of the workshops that are coming up. So next week, I am doing a self-care workshop, regulation or restoration, how to know what kind of self-care you need. It's literally what it says. It's going to be talking about why self-care is important and how do you figure out the kind of self-care that you need. And I'll also touch on the six dimensions of self-care. The week after that is a Q&A deep dive. If that's something you're interested in, let me know. The following is I'm doing the sleep workshop, The Art of Sleep, how your daily self-care supports rest when you need it most. That's really about what are the things that you can do during the day that make it easier for you to go to sleep at night. That is $10. And then I'm going back to emotional time travel, triggers, anchors, and staying present. And that workshop will be free. That one is not until November. And just so you know, all workshop recordings are available for free for 30 days after the workshop. And if you want to know more about upcoming workshops, I'm about hopefully this weekend, we'll be announcing maybe two or three other workshops that I'm going to be doing over the next few months. So if you'd like to keep on top of when that happens, you're welcome to join my community. I have a special invitation. I've touched on scripts a little bit. I've built a new program called From Scripts to Freedom. And I think that those of you who have enjoyed this workshop, I think you'll find this really useful because it really focuses on trauma. It essentially takes one piece of this IFS element where it comes to like the scripts where you become that autopilot, right? And you respond in a way that without even thinking about it. This is going to take that, work on it for 8 weeks and really help you move through it. In addition to the actual 8 sessions, there's a workbook that I'm including that has 9 modules. So there's 8 modules related to the 8 sessions, and then there's a ninth module that focuses on self-care. And so this is a new program. I'm just starting it out. I'm limiting it to 5 people right now. I already have interest from at least one, maybe 2 people at this point. But if you really want in, just let me know. Because it's a pilot, I'm offering it at 50% off. So if you're interested, let me know. Please just reach out to me. You can send me an email. You can book a clarity call, which is just a 30-minute free call with me. There you can talk about whatever you'd like to talk about, and I'll answer any questions that you may have. But again, I think this might be interesting to a lot of you tonight. I do wellness workshops for organizations. If you think this might fit, if not this particular one, but if things like self-care, sleep, self-compassion would be good for your organization, please let me know and connect me to someone, and I'd be happy to do that. I mentioned the clarity call. It's basically like a mini session. It'll give you a chance to see what it's like to work with me. I'm not going to pressure you, and in fact, I won't even let you schedule the meeting. If you want to start working with me, I won't let you schedule until I send you an email so that you have a chance to think about it. I really try to not make these pressure situations. I want you to feel comfortable and feel safe to be able to do this on your own. So you're welcome to do that. And then, assuming my website works fine, and then there's my bio here. And so I'll send this around tomorrow. And now let's take a look at your questions again. If you have any questions, feel free to submit them through the Q&A feature in Zoom, and I'd be happy to answer them. So I'm just reading the questions. How do you navigate people who just don't care? I mean, I think that's challenging, certainly, but I think it's really figuring out what we want and what we need from that scenario, right? I think part of the challenge of when we feel like people don't care is that we're still trying to meet what they want from us. That's a part, right? That's a part trying to please others. That's a script. What we really need to do is figure out what we want what we need from this situation, and how they are in terms of whether or not they care is less of a driving force. What can people do to foster improved self-love? I mean, so much. Um, I mean, spending time with yourself, learning, there are a lot of self-compassion practices. There are a lot of self-compassion affirmations that you can try. Um, I think first of all, it's really remembering the difference between self and part, you know. Excuse me. It's recognizing that when you are yourself, you do have self-love. So that if you're not feeling self-love, that's a part. And that part needs care and love, and you can provide that for it. So I hope that answers your question, but you already have that ability innate within you to care and love for yourself. It's just that you have these parts that don't believe that that's a thing, to be honest, right? They didn't grow up feeling loved and cared for. And so they need you to do that, you yourself to be able to do that. I'm sorry, I'm just reading the next one. Is the best thing or most traumatic thing? Oh, okay. So someone was saying that they heard on a TV show that they operate in some manner at the age of the best thing or most traumatic thing that happened to them. To me, that is like parts precisely, right? Our parts are stuck in those time periods, right? Like I mentioned, I have a 9-year-old part that is stuck being 9 years old in a house that was horrible. And when he takes over driving the bus, life is miserable. I have so much trouble with everything. But because I can't function in my life as a 9-year-old. And plus, what he felt at 9 was terrible. And so I feel all these terrible feelings. Instead of dismissing him, telling him to shove off, right? I need to show him care. I need to show him love and affection and kindness. And I need to listen to him and I need to support him. I need to be what he never had growing up because I can do that now, right? So I think when you feel that way, it's because of you're in a part, right? You're a part has taken over, is now driving the bus. When you're able to treat that part with caring and compassion, right? That's you acting from a place of self, and that's part of that healing. So, someone mentioned in a relationship like a marriage, very difficult when this person acts in a way that brings up the past trauma and you react like a child. Yes, 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 yes. It's very difficult, but also really important to kind of figure that out, right? We get involved with people that are going to trigger us. It's the way our brains are, right? Fundamentally, that's kind of what we're most comfortable with, right? So we have found something that is similar enough to what we experienced growing up with the hope that it'll be different. And so, yes, your partner probably does things that triggers you. Yes, and you do things that triggers your partner. Being able to see when that happens and then come from a place of self where you're allowed to care for your part, but also respond to your partner from yourself versus responding from, let's say, if you can imagine if I'm in a relationship and responding from 9-year-old, that's not going to go very well in a relationship. It doesn't. And so, right, being able to see that, oh, that that triggered my 9-year-old part. However, I can see that. I'm going to take care of him. And now I'm going to respond from self. Even if you have to do that afterwards, right? Even if your part says something and you're just like, oh, why did I do that? You can go back, think about it, reconnect with self, and then go back to your partner and say, hey, this is what happened. I'm sorry. I'm working on it. So, someone asked, how do you catch yourself in autopilot and how do you get out of it, especially if you've done it your whole life? And you have done it your whole life because that's what you learn to do, right? So it's not a flaw that you have. It's a script, right? That's the way I think about scripts, right? This is someone taught you, not necessarily explicitly, but someone taught you, hey, these are lines you got to follow when you're in this kind of situation. Something triggering happens for you, and you respond in autopilot. You respond by reading your script and just doing exactly what you've always done. So I talk about this in the program, and I talk about this. I have a scripts workshop that you're welcome to look at. I've also done some writing on scripts. The you want to be able to recognize a couple things. One, you got to build your sense of awareness, right? So that you can notice the types of situations where that happens. Are there similarities between these situations where you find yourself in autopilot, when you find yourself acting from a script? What is it? Is it a particular type of person? Is it a particular type of situation? Is it a feeling? Like, I know that when I feel helpless, right, that is a trigger for me, and a young part pops up. Can you figure that out? Right? Can you begin to notice the types of situations where that happens? Once you begin to do that, it becomes easier to then recognize when you've gone on autopilot. And I talk about the awareness arc, which is basically like why, what, and now what. So the why is like, why are you feeling this way? Why are you experiencing this? Right? Is it that for me? It's like, what is that sense of hopelessness? Right? Where did that come from? How did that happen? And then it's what? Well, what is happening? What is my experience? What is going on for me right now? And then now what is, well, now that I'm aware of it, what can I do? How do I still figure out what do I need and want from this situation in order to be able to move forward? And the problem is that when we're in our scripts, we don't think about what we want. We're always thinking about what the other wants. Someone talked about CBT. So CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. That's actually one of the workshops I'm planning to announce hopefully this weekend or next week. I'm going to do CBT. I haven't done that yet. I'm really excited about it. Not as excited about IFS, but excited about it. So there isn't like necessarily an overlap, but certainly if you're thinking about the types of cognitive distortions that you may experience. So cognitive distortions are like just these ways that our brains think ridiculous thoughts, right? The way we exaggerate something to say instead of like I'm having trouble this time, it's like I always have trouble with this, right? That's a cognitive distortion. It's also a sign of a part, right? So there is some overlap, but it's not. I've never seen anything about IFS talking about an overlap with CBT, but you certainly can connect them together. Is it possible for a person to be completely operated by parts with little to no access to self? I would argue that your sense of self, like the implicit in that question to me sounds like your sense of self isn't that strong or isn't that um, stable or something. And I would say your sense of self is strong. It is stable. It is still powerful. It is still good and enough. You may get lost in parts. You may have parts repeatedly driving the bus. but it doesn't diminish your sense of self. And so the first thing that I would suggest is, like I talked about the sunsets. What is it for you that helps you feel more connected to your sense of self? And how do you begin to find that on a regular basis, if not every day, then multiple times a week? So someone is kind enough to thank me. Thank you. Suggest books or other resources, experts to learn more about these topics, or tips on how to access self when parts feel deep-rooted and overwhelmingly in control, especially in terms of the intense anxious response in the body and mind. It's difficult to override this and respond to situations from self. So yes, I mean, you're absolutely right. The hardest part about the hardest part about parts is that they think that they're the only thing that's working. And so then you have to kind of remember that self exists. It's challenging, no question. Is why there's a whole field of therapy that's devoted to helping people with this, right? So one, Richard Schwartz, and I think there's an IFS Institute, but I'll send that around tomorrow, like in the announcement or email that I send around. I usually send it through Meetup, and then I also post something in the workshops discussion. So hopefully you'll get it one way or the other. But again, if you don't, please reach out to me. So that's a good place to go to. He's written a series of books. Um, No Bad Parts is probably a really good one to look at. And that's a good one. I definitely recommend it. You got to think about kind of yourself and your parts as also building a muscle. And so what I mean by that is like, yeah, when you've spent most of your life just having parts take over driving the bus, like, yeah, it feels insurmountable and difficult. And frankly, when I say those words, that's a part, right? When you feel that, that's a part feeling that. That's not yourself feeling that. But again, what I would say is it just takes you're building this self-awareness muscle. It takes practice to be able to notice that feeling of, okay, right? Like just now I said insurmountable. Well, that's not a self, like self wouldn't say insurmountable. That's a part, right? So, but I've been doing this, I've been doing this a while. I've spent, 40 some odd years of my life like building up my sense of self-awareness. So I'm not saying you need 40 some odd years to be able to do this, but it's not a snap of the fingers, right? It will take some practice. And so that's really what I would suggest is just practicing the self-awareness, just trying to notice what's the difference between when I feel like myself and when I feel like a part. And using the hints essentially that I talked about earlier in this workshop, because that will really make a difference. So, uh, how do you heal your self-esteem and not get anxious of people judging you? So, right off the bat, I'm going to say those are parts, right? Anxious about people judging you, that's a part. Self, you don't worry about that. That's not a concern of yours. You're pretty comfortable with yourself. But a part, right? That's triggering for a part, and that's what they're worried about. How do you heal your self-esteem? You don't need to heal your self-esteem, right? Your sense of self is fine. You have parts that have poor self-esteem, that don't believe in themselves, that think things are always going to be terrible, but they're parts. And so what you want to be able to do is remind yourself to be self. Hey, I'm here. I got this. We don't need to worry about other people as much, right? I'm going to help you feel better and safer now. And then we'll do what we need to do. So I hope that makes sense that I'm not trying to avoid answering the question, but I think the question is, how do I deal with parts that feel a lack of self-esteem or feel anxious about people judging me. And the way to do that is to work from a place of self and help do that healing process that way. Someone says it is so scary to let go of a job I don't want to do and take that leap of faith that I'll be okay financially. Any advice? I mean, that's what I'm living. Um, I've never been happier. I don't mean that as a question. I mean that like I've never been happier. Like I'm I don't make the same amount of money, right? But my mental health is so much better, and it has freed me in a way that I could only have hoped for. And so, there are certainly people that believe that things will work themselves out. I'm not quite there yet, but I do believe that if I keep following my passion, that I'll figure this out one way or the other. I don't need to be on the lifestyles of the rich and famous, right? So I think it's really about finding out what you want and what you need and being able to follow that. Uh, I so someone asked if I do DBT, and that answer to that is not so much no as just like it's not something I've really spent a lot of time with. It's a very interesting question. Um, I don't take insurance. While I am a licensed master of social work and I have a master's degree in family therapy, I intentionally do coaching. I think coaching allows me to work with you in a more collaborative way. It also allows me to work beyond one state, which is if you were here early on and saw the 20, 25 different states that were showing up in the couple of countries, like, so I don't do therapy, so insurance doesn't cover it. If you'd like to work with me, let me know. We can figure something out. Someone asked if you're going through long-term grief, is that self or parts? So, I'm not being obnoxious. I want to walk you through that process, Lori. So, grief is unpleasant. If you're feeling something unpleasant, that's a part. Now, can yourself, right? Just because you feel grief doesn't mean that that's wrong, right? It just means that you're feeling grief. But that is a part that's feeling that. And yourself can help that part go through that mourning process. And I think that's probably what's missing, right? When we go, I'm not sure the situation, but when we go through trauma, particularly as kids, there is a loss that we experience, the loss of what we should have had, the loss of love, the loss of a good family, whatever it is, right? There is that loss that we experience. And the only way through that is a mourning process and an acknowledgement of that loss and feeling that grief. But yourself can work with that part to be able to go through that safely. What if a part is fear of being without people and distrust to self, but want to grow up and be independent? What if a part is? So, yes, it's certainly possible for a part to not feel trusting of self. Um, because when we were growing up, right, these parts, there wasn't really someone to trust, right? So there aren't very trusting. So that's totally understandable. But it's partly like it becomes our self's job to be able to, right? Like with this 9-year-old part, I'm constantly trying to say, like, I've got you now, right? You took care of us then, but I've got you now. And it's just this constant reassurance. And it's you're just going to need to do it over and over again, right? I think of it this way, like if you meet a child and that child doesn't trust you, If you say, trust me, the child's not going to trust you. You're going to have to prove to that child that you are worth trusting. And that's what we have to do with our parts. They were wounded, some of them deeply wounded. And so, in order to help them, we need to reassure them that we're going to be there and we're not going to abandon them. I hope that helps. Do parts ever go away with therapy so you can have just a sense of self without the trauma? Loose. Um, so I'm not sure you're going to like my philosophy on this, but I don't think trauma goes away. There's no erasing of trauma. There's no undo button for trauma, particularly the heavier, deeper traumas. So does that mean that you're always going to be as deeply troubled as you may feel right now? Absolutely not, right? Like I feel like I'm a good example of that, right? I have done enormous work on myself, but I had a pretty horrible childhood experience, and I'm not trying to make light of it. I just also don't feel like we need to go into all of that just yet. But it took a lot of work for me to be able to move forward. What I feel like made a huge difference for me was understanding how my past played out in my present. And that is what I like about the scripts concept that I developed. That is what I like about IFS that Richard Schwartz put together. Like the goal isn't to try and deal with every single traumatic thing that we ever experienced. The goal is to be able to manage our present better than we have before. And the way we do that is self-awareness, right? Is understanding when our past impacts our present, catching that, and then being able to respond in the way that we want to. So, loose, I don't think parts ever go away. I don't think there aren't times where they still try to take over the bus, but the times are less frequent and they last much shorter. And to me, that's the biggest difference, right? This morning, I just woke up, someone else was clearly driving the bus. And I realized it relatively quickly, was able to take care of myself in a couple of different ways. And then I felt better. That to me, that's healing, right? That's life changing. That could have knocked me down for the entire day or longer. Certainly in the past, that would have knocked me down for days because I wouldn't even have realized it happened. So that's, I think, what you're striving for is to be able to catch these, like when parts take over or when scripts start, to be able to catch that as soon as you can so that you can then I talk about it in the script stuff. I talk about the difference between reacting and responding. You want to be able to respond from a place of choice and freedom, not react because of what you went through growing up. Okay. I hope that answers everybody's questions. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Oh, Molly jumped in. So, what if your part does not want to give up? Yeah, I mean that's gonna happen. And it's the same thing. You want to keep caring for it. You want to keep trying to be there for it. You want to keep reassuring it that it doesn't have to do it anymore, that you as yourself can handle this now. You want to keep reminding it. You want to ground, like that grounding, the time grounding, right? You want to help it remember, okay, it's September 2025. I'm 54 years old. I'm, in the state of Florida. The people that hurt us are somewhere else or they're not alive anymore or whatever it is, right? Whatever way that you can go through and just keep reassuring it. It's just going to take time. It's not a, it's, excuse me, it's not a snap. It's not going to be simple, but it's not going to, it doesn't want to give up not because it actually wants to keep doing it, but because it's afraid of us getting hurt. It's still trying to do its job. And we just need to reassure it that it doesn't need to do its job anymore. It can actually choose a whole different job, or it can choose to not have a job at all. If that's it, I say thank you again. Thank you so much. I think you can tell this is a meaningful workshop to me. And so I hope you got